The Großglockner Ultra Trail, GGUT, is known as one of the toughest trail runs in Austria. In fact, it is the toughest 100-kilometer trail run, not only in Austria, but in all of Western Europe, when compared to races of similar length. GGUT was created in 2015 and follows a famous hiking trail called the Glorerhütte, which circles Austria's highest peak in 7 days, going from alpine hut to alpine hut with about 8 hours of hiking per day. The time limit for the race is just 30 hours to complete the 108.2 kilometers and 6,529 meters of high alpine terrain. The highest point is 2,668 meters. The fastest runners take 14 to 15 hours. The race starts in Kaprun on Friday at 2,200 hours. For the first 5 years, it was run clockwise around the Großglockner. Then the course was changed to the original direction of the Glorerhütte. The first 16 kilometers with the steep climb to the Mooserboden reservoir are not part of the Glorerhütte, which only starts at Mooserboden at an altitude of 1,334 meters. The first 7 kilometers are a mix of some steeper climbs and runnable sections. The route passes the Klamsee, where the road turns into a trail. Then at kilometer 7, the first major climb begins. 1,232 meters over 9 kilometers, average gradient 14.5%. The ascent is sweat-inducing and offers a first taste of what lies ahead, demanding and technical trails with extreme gradients. The terrain is difficult almost throughout, with large stones, mud, and mountain streams slowing down the pace. Because the weather is unpredictable, there is a bad weather route that was piloted in 2023. Here, the first 36 kilometers are on asphalt and largely flat. The alternative route only meets the original route at the Rudolfshütte at kilometer 42. What makes the ascent so difficult and slow is not only the many stones and roots, but also the mud and creeks. These also make it impossible to reach the top without getting wet feet and raising the chance of blisters. As a side note, with the previous route, this tough descent was the last section towards the finish line and took place in the afternoon. With the changed running direction, it is all at night, a clear disadvantage of the new route. In fact, a large part of the Hohe Tauern National Park, including the spectacular lakes Wasserfallboden and Mooserboden, now completely disappear into the dark. The terrain stays difficult. The average gradient is over 20%. The track varies from rocky trails to short sections of road and some tunnels that run under the automobile street. The tunnel sections create a unique atmosphere reminiscent of an 18th century gold mine. The longest tunnel section is followed by a short but challenging descent, requiring extra caution to avoid danger and potential early termination of the race before even reaching the first aid station. Fortunately, ropes secure the passage, providing additional support, though a constant drip from above is almost always present and adds to the difficulty. The course remains challenging with rocks, mud, and stream crossings. The Kapruner Ache, a mountain creek originating below the Kapruner Törl at 2,639 meters, feeds the Mooserboden reservoir, which collects meltwater from the Pastors Glacier on the Großglockner. This area, a popular excursion destination, accessible by bus via an asphalt road, offers spectacular views, but at night, the highlight of the old route, including the dam crossing, is completely invisible. The first aid station is at the reservoir, 15 kilometers in. Walking across the dam at night feels strange, especially if you know the route in daylight, as the view of the lakes is now hidden in the dark. As said, the Großglockner hiking trail starts here, making this first ascent not part of the original hiking trail. The next 3.3 kilometer section after the dam leads along the lake. It appears easy on the elevation profile, but is actually a challenging up and down with nearly 100 meters of ascent and descent. The path is rough and cluttered with rocks, making it difficult to navigate at night. The new route of the race is more than just a change in running direction. It fundamentally alters the race's character. While the original direction led through less spectacular valleys and forest paths at night, the new direction starts with a steep climb in technically challenging high alpine terrain, causing you to miss much of the spectacular scenery due to running in complete darkness. Ahead lies a formidable challenge, a grueling ascent that demands respect. Over just 2.6 kilometers, the trail climbs a staggering 590 meters, averaging a relentless 22.5% gradient. At its most unforgiving, the slope spikes to a brutal 40%. This is the path to Kapruner Törl, a lofty perch at 2,636 meters, where the trail narrows to a rocky, unforgiving ribbon, leaving no room for error. The path now ascends a dramatic moraine ridge, a jagged scar left by ancient glaciers. High above the sprawling basin, it traces the winter's route along the moraine's backbone. As it nears Kapruner Törl at 2,639 meters, the slope sharpens, the ground giving way to a chaotic scramble of loose stone slabs. Even in late summer, remnants of old snow can linger, turning this stretch into a treacherous maze. Caution is paramount. Those shifting stones are unforgiving, and a misstep could lead to a dangerous fall. The climb is a test of endurance, the terrain growing increasingly treacherous with every step. Loose stones shift underfoot, and the occasional mountain stream cuts across the path, its waters a fleeting respite in this harsh landscape. In daylight, the reward would be breathtaking, a panoramic vista of towering peaks, many piercing the sky above 3,000 meters. Kapruner Törl was once the crown jewel of the old route, a highlight that now remains hidden in the shadows of night. Yet even in darkness, the spirit of the Glorerhütte emerges. This is no ordinary trail. It's a titan, a loop that defies boundaries. Twice it crosses the mighty Alps, weaving through 3 federal states, 7 valleys, and 6 towns. Along its path, it skirts past 14 glaciers and is encircled by 300 peaks, each a sentinel of the high mountains. The Hohe National Park, Austria's oldest, stands as a sanctuary for the rare and the endangered. Here, the skies belong to the golden eagle, its wingspan a symbol of untamed freedom, while the bearded vulture haunts the crags, a silent guardian of this wild realm. This is a place where nature reigns supreme, its beauty as raw as it is relentless. The glaciers descending from these towering peaks give rise to imposing ice falls, a testament to their power. The trail, now brutally rocky and demanding, traverses the moraine of the Karlinger Keys, where snowfields persist even into summer. It climbs toward the rugged Kapruner Törl, a notch beneath the Törlkupfer peaks. By day, this vantage point offers a breathtaking panorama. The Kapruner and Stubach valleys unfold below, framed by the glaciated summits of the Hohe Riffel and the Kupfer, their icy crowns glinting in the light. The summit at Kapruner Törl is just the beginning. Next comes a punishing descent, 600 meters down over just 2.8 kilometers, a brutal 20% grade. The terrain here is unforgiving, demanding serious technical skill. We plunge down past the Vorderer Eisspiekel, the slope steepening again before finally reaching the Tauernmusi and the startling turquoise glacial stream flowing from the Udenwinkelkies. The trails remain narrow, razor thin. Overtaking is simply impossible. By daylight, the Tauernmus Basin is breathtaking. Now in the quiet, the only sounds are the rushing streams. The path snakes between massive, moss-covered boulders, ancient sentinels guarding the pass. Beware, these giants often scatter the trail completely into a confusing sea of rubble. Every step is treacherous, the rocks slick with moss, waiting to betray an unwary foot. Don't expect respite. The climb up the Hinterer Schafbüchel to the Berghotel Rudolfshütte, 2,348 meters, is thankfully shorter. 1.8 kilometers gaining 295 meters, 15%. But easier isn't the word. This stretch is intensely technical and exposed to the wind. Following the path becomes a battle. Markings exist, but spotting them in the dark is a gamble. As we climb towards 2,300 meters, the exposure increases. The wind bites harder. A brief descent follows the Rudolfshütte, 2,311 meters, dropping about 80 meters toward the Weissee. Then barely a kilometer later, the trail turns upward again, aiming for the Kals Tauern Pass at 2,513 meters. Here, remnants of winter linger. Patches of old snow and avalanche debris crunch underfoot. Finally, the descent begins to relent, just as the first faint hints of dawn stain the sky. The path along the Dorfer See remains raw and technical, but gradually, mercifully, the terrain softens. This is where the GGUT route diverges from the mighty Glockner. The classic circuit tackles the extremely demanding Silesia Höhenweg, scaling the Großglockner at 2,826 meters before reaching the Sudetendeutsche Hütte. The race wisely spares runners this formidable, though stunning, high alpine section. Instead, we follow a gentler descent. The trail widens mile by mile as we lose 1,129 meters over 14.4 kilometers, minus 8.7% towards the valley in the village of Kals below. And just as the dramatic landscapes of the first half give way to rolling alpine meadows and pastures, perhaps less spectacular but undeniably peaceful, the sun breaks the horizon, painting the new day. The final kilometers settle into a gentle, decidedly unspectacular rhythm. We follow the Kals downstream on a modest, winding descent. The trail leads us through canyons and gorges, pleasant but lacking the earlier drama. Gradually, it brings us down past the historic village nestled in the Kalsertal Valley, arriving finally in Kals. Here at the journey's halfway mark, the grand spectacle of the high mountains yields to quieter, more subdued valley terrain. The path from Kals diverges from the traditional Glockner circuit. Rather than ascending via Chadinam at 2,330 meters, this route winds through Greibühl at 2,247 meters and past the Lochner house, heading toward Glorerhütte. The journey begins along forest trails that rise gently through the trees. This deceptive calm doesn't last long. The terrain soon transforms into a demanding climb. 993 meters of elevation gain compressed into 6.1 kilometers, creating a steep 18.2% gradient that leads to Glatzberg at 2,627 meters. The ascent cuts through thick, verdant vegetation. While the path itself presents no technical challenges, the relentless steepness proves formidable. The blazing morning sun intensifies the difficulty, beating down on climbers as they push upward through the green corridor. At the summit, the reward emerges. Rolling alpine meadows stretch across the landscape, framed by sweeping mountain panoramas. The trail continues along narrow but non-technical paths that still demand endurance and careful footing. A sharp descent follows, 342 meters dropped over just 1.5 kilometers, creating a steep 21.8% downward grade that terminates at Lochner House at 1,923 meters. From this point, the route's history becomes significant. The original path once continued over Glorerhütte at 2,241 meters to Pfandlscharte at 2,825 meters, then onward to Salmhütte. That section was brutal in its difficulty but represented the tour's highest elevation and most spectacular scenery, the route's crowning achievement. The current adapted route abandons this magnificent section. Instead, a very steep but less dramatic ascent leads through alpine meadows to Glorerhütte, where the path reconnects with the Glockner circuit at Berger Törl at 2,651 meters, leaving behind the grandeur of what was once the route's most memorable passage. After Glorerhütte, the route continues with 3 kilometers of undulating terrain. While not overly technical, the path maintains significant gradients throughout. The landscape transforms into a high alpine environment of spectacular beauty. The trail first descends over rocky paths to the rushing Leiterbach torrent, then curves right in a demanding ascent to Salmhütte at 2,644 meters. From Salmhütte, the Wiener Höhenweg, trail number 741, leads across magnificently blooming alpine grasslands, descending gently with a small counter climb to Stockerscharden at 2,501 meters. The geologically fascinating formations of Schwertek and Schwertkopf dominate the skyline, while far below stretches the Leitertal Valley. Here, the full beauty of Hohe Tauern National Park reveals itself. Some sections require cable assistance and present technical challenges. Edelweiss and gentian flowers hide along the trail's edges. Stockerscharde ranks among the route's premier highlights. The view down to the Pasterze Glacier and across to Großglockner and Johannesburg creates an unforgettable panorama. The subsequent descent proves punishing. 536 meters dropped over 2 kilometers, a severe 25.1% grade. Steep switchbacks lead down to Margaritzenstausee at 2,000 meters. The impressive dam wall provides passage to the opposite side, where after a small counterclimb, the route reaches Glockner House at 2,132 meters on the Großglockner High Alpine Road. From Glockner House, trail number 728 leads to a steep hanging valley and eastward to a small mountain lake. This passage constitutes the tour's second major highlight, now reached in daylight. The ascent to Pfandlscharte at 2,663 meters presents an extreme challenge in blazing midday heat. 717 meters of elevation gain, over 4.2 kilometers, and 18.2% gradient. Fluid intake becomes critical here. The terrain returns to rocky, high alpine conditions. Barren scree and old snowfields create a lunar landscape. The path climbs into the basin of Südliche Pfandlscharte, then up to Pfandlscharte at 2,663 meters, a windswept ridge offering perfect distant views. This section was previously traversed in darkness on the old road. The direction was likely reversed to showcase the impressive glacier in daylight, probably the main advantage of the new running direction. The descent through Fährleitental becomes the route's longest, 2,071 meters, over 18.3 kilometers, a 13.1% downward grade. The initial descent over glacier snow presents a genuine challenge. The slope proves too steep for running. Instead, one must slide down on their backside, which sounds simpler than it proves. Speed builds quickly, and sharp stones beneath the snow can cause painful impacts. On the old route, the 2,000-meter ascent in darkness, culminating over snow, created an equally strange experience. In complete darkness, the route spiraled upward in increasingly dizzying gradients until forward progress nearly ceased. In the snow, every 2 steps forward meant 1 step back. The descent to Speyerbrunnel at 2,295 meters and Trauneram at 1,522 meters remains partially very steep. From there, the Glockner circuit leads into the Fährleitental valley floor. Following the Fuscherache River on a comparatively restful path to Gasthaus Tauernhaus in Fusch for Leiten. The route to Fusch offers little remarkable scenery. The path winds over forest roads, paved streets, some trails, and muddy cattle pastures. One advantage of the old route was that this unremarkable section, where nothing significant gets missed, comprised a major portion of the nighttime running. However, this passage shouldn't be underestimated in terms of difficulty. From Fusch, another brutal and steep ascent awaits over a ski slope. 662 meters of elevation gain over 2.9 kilometers, a punishing 23.2% gradient. This climb stretches endlessly, with sections that are muddy and difficult to navigate. Here, the route demands absolutely everything from the runner. The path continues relentlessly upward. Just when one thinks the summit is reached, another ascent reveals itself. During this grueling climb, the sun sets, creating a beautiful evening atmosphere. Once at the top, the challenges persist. While the terrain becomes technically easier on a wide forest road, the route continues to drag on. 6.3 kilometers with 270 meters of climbing and 418 meters of descent. After 6 kilometers of ups and downs through the forest, the final downhill arrives over technical trails that demand everything from tired muscles and aching feet. 538 meters of descent over 3.1 kilometers, an 18% downward grade. Eventually, even this section ends and the final kilometer runs over asphalt to the finish in Kaprun. The course is spectacular, probably the most spectacular in the region. However, the old route direction was more attractive. Apart from the Pfandlscharte, nothing significant was missed during the darkness sections. With the new route, numerous key highlights are missed instead.